When we think about executive, we think about executive functioning, decision making, huge weight of responsibility. We think of pastoral as caring and lots of, shepherding, one on one discipleship. And those can often feel in tension with each other. Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the LeadingSmart podcast. We're in season 3, leading in real time. And I say this every time, but we really mean it, because if you are listening to this in a row, like maybe you're on a road trip or you're on a drive and you're listening to several in a row, we might look or sound familiar because we're doing this back to back. So we just recorded last week's episode, and now we're recording the episode you're listening to now,
And
obviously.
we should tell
But
people why we're doing it back to back. It's because
because
we recorded one last week and it sucked. Like we were both like afterwards, we had technical glitches and we were like, neither one of us were proud about how the episode went. I think we were rushed and we were tired, and so why we're
yeah,
having to do 2 this week.
it's so true. I feel like Monday through Thursday of last week, I was just like, I had brain fog. And then the irony is, I felt like Friday, I was like, okay, I'm back, which I think was
It
when we
may have
recorded that one, but it,
maybe
it was
you
not
weren't
good.
back.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't back. So, anyway, and we also, as we were brainstorming what issues we're working through with clients right now, these two topics are related to staff structure, but they're different. So last week was on executive assistant versus admin assistant versus chief of staff. This week, we're going to unpack the executive pastor role. So when it's time to hire an executive pastor, and the executive pastor can look a lot of different ways. And so we're going to talk through that today. So what a big question, Tim. When should you hire an XP? Yeah. How do we even start this conversation? Because it's such a
But
big
it's a
one.
question we get a lot, right? So,
Yes.
like I'll start with kind of like a overview statement, which is sooner than you think. I think a lot of church, and I'm thinking now like a church that gets planted and you have a couple, eventually you have a couple hundred people and you're starting to grow, whatever. I've heard people say churches should hire an XP when they get to about 6 to 800. I've heard churches say should hire an XP when they get to about 1500, no later than 1500. So a lot of that depends on the wiring of the team you have. So there are lead pastors that just have a wiring that's it's kind of an XP wiring. We're working with uh, Ron Watts at LaCroix Church in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and Ron has
Mm.
he's got the genius of tenacity. He's got like an XP wiring, but he planted this church 35 years ago, and so he could get away a long time without an executive pastor. But most lead pastors, I guess, generally don't have that don't have as much of that wiring. So I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
I used to be pretty definitive and say about the time you're 800, I would say you need one, and I'm like that's probably true for a lot of churches. But there's a lot of churches that are like 150 or 200 that need someone that a part of the hat they're wearing is some of the operations, systems, administration at the church.
Hmm. And I also think, related to our topic last week, it I think it is a really cool and also can be overwhelming time to be alive, where it feels like we do have so many options. So I want to encourage church leaders to think, not just be like, oh, when is it time to hire an XP? Because that's what churches do. But what you just said, which is the wiring of the lead pastor or the planter or the senior leader or the senior leadership team. And don't just jump to hire
Yeah.
one because you feel like it's what you're supposed to do. It might mean that you need a different role in the team. I also think you mentioned Ron. It was Ron, right? Is that
Yeah.
who you said? Yeah. Right. I'm also thinking about like David Whiting on
Yeah.
our Leading Smart team. He, to me, is one of the most operational lead pastors I've ever met. He was a lead pastor for many years. And I don't know exactly when he hired an XP, but I imagine he was able to carry a lot of that, because it didn't drain his energy like it would folks who don't have as much of that operational muscle.
Yeah. And like you said, that like this time, and you mentioned briefly last week about fractional, not fractured. You don't want a fractured XP, but maybe a fractional, like so someone who's able to help you with a few hours We're going to talk in a little bit later about, there's CFO outsourcing services. There's a lot of things now. When I started, there was no one to outsource to. Like you had to, either solve it through volunteers or hire someone who had that specialty to be able to accomplish it for you. And a lot has changed now in so you can really you can outsource a ton of things that either you're not gifted at, or the church doesn't have that gift, and then you can like really focus on bringing someone on the team, part-time, full,
Mhm.
that can help in some of those other more executive levels rather than task levels.
Yeah, so that leads to my next question, which is, the role of executive pastor has can often feel like a juxtaposition for a lot of folks, because when we think about executive, we think about executive functioning, decision making, huge weight of responsibility. We think of pastoral as caring and lots of, shepherding, one-on-one discipleship, and those can often feel in tension with each other. And so you actually have created a phenomenal resource, Tim, that you can find at leadingsmart.com. Click on resources. And then I think it's under our guides and ebooks,
Yeah.
right? Free guides and ebooks. Anyway, it's a kind of a little assessment that you can do to determine, are you more of an executive or are you more of a pastor? So can you talk a little bit about that and what led you to create that tool?
Yeah, and it's working with churches that, like, when a church says, "Hey, we're looking to hire an executive pastor," I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" Because there's just so many definitions, and what do you need? And sometimes a church really needs an executive, big capital E, little p pastor. And you might even
Mhm.
call it an executive director. You maybe not don't even use the pastor title, or chief of operation, whatever. You have other titles for it, but you're really looking for someone who's operationally, administratively, system wise going to lend their expertise to help um, solve problems and help lead the church. Sometimes you're looking for a little e executive, big P pastor, where you really need someone who's almost like, in the old days, you would have called this an associate pastor. Um, if they were, you'd almost call them a co-lead pastor, except maybe they're, one step down from being a peer with the lead pastor. But someone who, like, they're actually going to preach 10 times a year, and they're going to do a lot of weddings, and they're going to do a lot of funerals, and they're very passionate about ministries. So they're going to come alongside the student pastor, the group's pastor, or volunteers, whoever's leading those areas, and really help them, uh, just resource them as far as the ministry goes. And also they're gonna
Mhm.
figure, they gotta make some solutions around ops and systems and stuff. But you're really looking for executive pastor instead of an executive pastor.
Yeah. And this is, I would say, would be larger or more complex churches. You see an executive pastor of operations and executive pastor of ministries. And I think of the executive pastor of ministries being capital P, lowercase e pastors, executive pastors. And then typically executive pastor of operations being uppercase E, lowercase p. That's hard to keep track of
Yeah.
visually in your head. Um, and so, again, that's not the case for, the majority of churches will only have one XP, but that can also be a way to think about it. And I just love this because it's giving freedom to people. Again, I think it's helpful to not put ourselves in a box and think like, oh, in order for me to carry this title, I have to have this wiring or this strengths finders or working genius or whatever. It's no, not at all. It just looks different for every church and every person.
Ebook resource that you referenced, what is it? It is it's like a self-assessment or assessment you can give to, like, let's say you're recruiting, you're trying to find an executive pastor, and you want it to lean on the executive side more than the pastor side. And so this is an assessment. Every question is, would you rather be doing this or be doing that? Are you more wired like this or more wired like that? And it just helps you kind of suss out, are they the executive that we need, or are they the pastor that we need? And it helps them kind of self-assess that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, you mentioned this earlier, but I want to talk about this because I think it's an area that I'm passionate about, which I mentioned last time or in our last episode and a little bit a few minutes ago around outsourcing. So, again, just a way for churches to think creatively around what are areas that we can outsource to. And it's not always just about budget. I think sometimes people think outsourcing just from a cost savings perspective, but I had someone recently ask me about what the greatest return on energy was. And I was like, man, what a great question. I think sometimes outsourcing can help us remove things from our team that are draining us and are sucking time and energy and resources when we could go be investing that in higher impact areas. So, yeah, just my encouragement to when we talk about outsourcing, it's not just for cost savings, but I think it also can be from a return on energy perspective to make sure that your team is focused on, you and your team are focused on the right and most high impact things. So we talked about finances, one of our LeadingSmart partners, and I had the joy of working really closely with Jeff as his coach for a while, is Church Central Office. And we love Jeff for many reasons, but he was in the XP role. So, and before he had a corporate career, then he was in the XP role, and then he started Church Central Office because he saw the huge opportunity of churches outsourcing to experts who can be that fractional CFO or accountant to their team and really take the heavy lifting off their plates. And so that's one area that I would love to see more churches outsource. Not to mention, also, I think there is an accountability, like an advantage of mitigating risk by outsourcing that as well to a third party. So that's one area. HR, Tim, you just got an email earlier today asking for a recommendation for fractional HR. So what are you seeing around people or churches looking to outsource that HR piece?
Yeah, I see more and more churches leaning into that, and some different like aspects of that. So there's organizations out there that like are like assist you in the, well, of course, the searches like we talked about Vanderbilt last week, but short of that, assist you in like just the processes around hiring and onboarding and offboarding and all of the paperwork and the legalities and stuff around your personnel issues. There's obviously you just mentioned accounting, which ties into like payroll and all that kind of stuff as well. You talked about Jeff. What I love about what Jeff's doing, because there's more organizations out there that like they'll do your bookkeeping, their accounting, and Jeff will do that. His team will do that, but they'll be your fractional CFO, and that's a piece I don't see anyone
Yeah.
else doing well, specifically for churches, where it's like, okay, you can figure out your bookkeeping maybe, but you need someone to come in and like help you um, make sure you have all of the information to make strategic decisions and help you make those strategic decisions from a distance. And that's what I think
Mhm.
Jeff is brilliant at. I see on the HR side of things, things like staff handbooks, uh, processes,
Like all the paperwork.
yeah, performance evaluation, help around those. And of course, I mean, churches for years have been outsourcing usually like their health insurance. You got someone running
Mhm.
that for you and helping you diagnose all your options every year. So lots of options there. I think one of the reasons why I like outsourcing more than I used to, it is the cost savings, but more than that is when I have like, let's say accounting, when I'm paying an accountant, and let's say my church is big enough that I'm paying them, 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week to do accounting. Really, let's say it's a 40-hour week job. Really, I'm paying them about 28, maybe 30, because they're coming to all my staff meetings. They're doing all my staff lunches. They're doing all our staff retreats. They're doing like we're pulling them into the life of the staff, which you should if they're on your team. Um, Whereas if I'm paying someone, if I'm outsourcing it and I'm paying them for 40 hours, I'm getting 40 hours. Or if I'm paying for 30 hours, which I probably can do it in less hours if you're outsourcing it. Plus, they're just keeping up with all of the best practices and the software changes and all of the things that an organization can keep up with when an individual sometimes can't.
So true. I'm glad you said that about the HR piece because, yeah, on like the benefits side, there's like PEOs, and several churches I know work with, completely outsource the HR function to PEOs.
Tell them
Or
what the
there's like what
PEO
you
stands
said.
for.
Oh gosh, actually, I don't. Uh,
Something
Something employee organization,
professional, maybe.
right? Professional
All
employer.
right.
Yeah, I don't know. It basically acts as like your HR,
Yeah.
like an outsourced HR department. They
Yep.
do all the benefits, like even like the hiring paperwork, like even onboarding paperwork, termination, like all that kind of stuff. But then there's also some organizations that will do like what you're, hey, we just need like our employee handbook needs to be updated, or we have this employee issue that we've never run into before. So more of that consulting kind of piece that is helpful to outsource. Um, okay, a couple others that came to mind, Tim. One is IT. So this was an area I explored for a client of mine who was looking at what would it look like to outsource IT. I think this one is it's so big. Like when we say IT, it's kind of like marketing communications. It's just massive. And so you might be hearing IT and you might be thinking like hardware, whereas somebody else might hear IT and think of like getting everybody's computers up and running on like all the software pieces. So anyway, but we do have a wonderful partner called Intulse here at Leading. This was not meant to be an episode where we're like talking about all of our partners, but they
Yeah.
are just incredible
Yeah.
partners who help churches in these areas. So they do IT on like the phone system side. So anyway, that just came to me.
They
But
also do
yeah, I
like full technology solutions, like come in and assess like what do you need technology wise, and then they'll send people in to help you with that.
yeah, and so that's one that I think a lot of churches could benefit from in this whole changing landscape of man, what in the world? There's so much IT things. I sound like a boomer. So much IT things. Oh, another area I was thinking of that an executive pastor often holds is legal,
Yeah.
which we have Michael Best,
Yeah.
um, our friends at Michael Best. But that's another piece that I see as a big stress point for a lot of XPs. They feel like this expectation that they should know what to do. And so I'm grateful for organizations like Michael Best, who they're the experts. They know what to do. You, as the executive pastor, it's not your responsibility to know the answer, but it's your responsibility to have the resources and the gumption to go find the
Yeah.
answer. What are other areas, Tim, where you feel like executive teams or executive pastors should explore as they're thinking about potential outsourcing opportunities?
I think like things that are more seasonal than year round, like your strategic planning, like your, we already, we've been doing for years. Churches are pretty used to hiring like a stewardship consultant for a campaign, those kinds of things. Like
Yeah.
when you're an executive pastor at a church, you just don't have the knowledge or the breadth to keep up with what's the best way to increase the generosity in our church and see our giving go up or raise the money for the building, those kinds of things. Same thing with like development, like if you're looking for property or campuses or designing, it's like those kinds of things. XPs are typically more accustomed to hiring architects and contractors and owners reps and all that kind of thing, but some aren't. Some try to do it on their own. I just think you can find a lot of help there and you can free up resources.
Yeah, when you were talking about generosity and development, Generosity OS, our leading smart partner, that's what they help churches
Yeah.
do. Um, so yeah, I think my takeaway from all of this is, and I was just on a call last week with an executive pastor. He's been through a really hard 2025 was rough on their church, went through a lot of transition. They had a moral failure on their team. I mean, it was just hard. And he's getting ready to prepare for a 4-week sabbatical and was just talking about how he is through his process of preparing for his sabbatical has been taking an audit, right? Of like all of the things that I do so I can equip the team and was talking about how overwhelmed he was just realizing all of the things that are on his plate. Because when we're in reactionary mode as an executive pastor, it's just hard to see the forest through the trees, and we don't even realize how much we're carrying until we take the time um, to really audit that. And so this is a great opportunity early in the year for you to. Oh, and an exercise I encourage leaders to do is, literally take a piece of paper, draw 3 columns, and don't get too hung up for my executive pastor of operations, don't get too hung up on the numbers, but put like 25, 50, and $100 like at the top of each column, and take an audit of all of the things that are on your plate and put them in those buckets. Like, what are the $25 an hour things that I'm doing? What are the $50 an hour things I'm doing? And what are the $100 an hour things I'm doing? And again, don't get caught up in the numbers. The point is just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You should be spending the majority of your time on tier 3 Tier 1 is a great opportunity for you to either hire or outsource. Tier 2 might be kind of more of like a hybrid, or putting that on the list for you to strategically think about of who else on your team could carry that, or are there outsourcing solutions that you can start delegating that off of your plate. And then tier 3 is really where you should be spending the majority of your time. So yeah, check out that tool, leadingsmart.com, click on resources and then free guides and downloads, and let us know. Email. This will be fun. Email us if you're more of an X or a P, and any learnings or takeaways that you had as you kind of did that self-assessment.
Oh, that'd be fun. It'd be fun to get some interaction on that and hear where people see themselves.
All right. Well, Tim, you have our fun segment today. I have no idea what you're going to
Okay,
ask me.
I think this is going to be insightful, interesting, maybe fun. We'll see. So here is the question. Money is no object, and you cannot fail. You will succeed. What do you want to do? What would you want to do in 2026 if money were no object and you cannot fail?
Okay. Are you asking me this because I kind of mentioned this earlier to you, or is this?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
I'm not that original, so maybe.
Okay. Because what's funny is I was like, oh, I did tell him something that was related to this earlier today, but then something else popped in my head. So is it okay if I share two
Yes,
ideas?
totally.
Okay. So the thing that I've been saying, and I still agree, like more of a practical answer, I guess. I feel like is I would just be on the phone all day, every day, helping CEOs or executive pastors solve problems. Like I love executive coaching with high capacity leaders who are growth minded and looking to level themselves and their teams up. Like, I don't care what we're talking about, sign me up. I'm in. So it just gives me so much energy. And I'm so grateful for you, Tim, that I get to do that
And we get such great
as a part of the
feedback from you
Leading
doing
team.
that, which is amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. But the other thing that also came to mind, which is more of the fun and kind of like out of reach, probably one, is whatever it looks like to be the me version of Jimmy Fallon, I would love.
Oh,
Yeah, like some sort of like a talk show, or maybe it's like it doesn't need to be like on real TV. It could be like YouTube or whatever, but yeah, like talk show with fun segments, having great conversations, that's just a brand that's helping motivate and inspire people to reach their full potential, which is ultimately my vision for like the Ready Network,
yeah.
kind of trying to develop that into being that and whatever it ends up evolving into. But helping leaders and teams and people just get ready for growth in their lives. So that'd be fun. But I love Jimmy Fallon, and I think his show is so fun. So
And
something like that. If money were no object and I could not fail, that would probably be like the fun
yeah.
answer.
And you said before, like, if you could like host or co-host like podcast all day, every day, like you living your best
Yes,
dream.
exactly. Which is what's what we're doing
That's
right
what we're doing right
now.
now. All right. I should have given more
Oh
thought
God, what about
to
you?
answering this question, but I didn't. But here's the thing that just popped into my mind is if I couldn't fail and
Hmm.
like money was no object, um, I would go be the chief of staff or actually general manager for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish football team. I would be like we would Marcus Freeman and I you would see no light between us. We would be buds, and I'd be helping him build his organization because I'm so captivated. Like he's such a culture warrior for that team, and man, I'd love to learn from him, and I'd love to add to it.
That is such a good answer. That's so cool,
And he'd
Tim.
probably pay me, but like I do it for free because money's no object.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, we were talking earlier today and you were like, "Hold on, there's a press conference happening with Notre Dame. I got to know what's happening." And so he's sticking around. So
If I was his
that's what
general
we
manager, I would have known about that press conference and I'd have been all
there
over
you
it.
go. Yeah. That's so cool. What a great answer, Tim. That's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, head on over to leadingsmart.com. I encourage you to And we are happy to introduce you to any, if you're like, yes, I need to figure out outsourcing for finances, legal, IT, staffing. I mean, goodness, our partners are incredible. So we are happy to, yeah, generosity. We're happy to introduce you to any and all of our partners. Head on over to leadingsmart.com, resources, free guides and downloads, take that assessment. And then if you go to leadingsmart.com/podcast, there you can find the links to, well, the link to our Israel trip that's coming up this fall. That's also at /Israel, but you can find that there. You can find the download for our Simply Strategic Show ebook anniversary edition that also has the link to all of those podcasts from 20 years ago in there. So lots of resources for you is what I'm saying over at leadingsmart.com. Check it out and email us. We'd love to hear from you. Holly at hollytate.com and Tim at leadingsmart.com. And let us know what you're thinking, what you're learning, and what you want us to talk about.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. See you all next week.
See ya.